There are two main reasons why leaders fail. So the first reason why leaders fail would be external. That would mean the time may not be right, the conditions may be unfavorable, there may be no one on the other side to talk to. It's interesting. I think it was British Prime Minister Harold Macmillan was asked what was the most difficult thing he had to deal with in government, and he replied, "Events, my boy, events." Machiavelli called this fortuna, the power of bad luck that can defeat even the greatest. Sometimes, despite your best efforts, you fail. Such is life. But there's a second reason why leaders fail, and that reason is internal. So remember, the first one was external. Now this is internal. So as a leader, you may simply lack the courage to lead. Sometimes you will have to oppose the crowd. You will have to say no when everyone else is saying yes. That can be terrifying. You know, crowds will have their own will and momentum. To say no may be putting your career at risk, even your life at risk. That is when courage is needed, and not showing it can constitute a moral failure of the worst kind for you as a leader. So, one of the necessary gifts you will need as a leader is the ability to keep going despite opposition. The ability to keep going despite opposition, envy, false accusations, and repeated setbacks. Every leader who stands for something will face opposition. This may be a genuine conflict of interest. For example, in politics, a leader may elect to make society more equitable, which means they will win the support of the poor, but then they will antagonize the rich. One elected to reduce the tax burden will do exactly the opposite. It cannot be avoided. In fact, in politics, we often say that politics without conflict is a contradiction in terms. In business, you have a limited budget. So which one of your executives gets what budget? There is going to be conflict. Any leader appointed or elected to anything, or more loved or gifted than others, will face envy. Your rivals will say, "Why wasn't it me?" Some may even agitate the people against you. In some cases, your own leadership team can sabotage you because they don't agree with you. You are also likely to face false accusations as a leader. False accusations have occurred often enough in history. Many of you will know the story of Joan of Arc, who was accused of heresy and burned at the stake. A quarter of a century later, she was posthumously declared innocent by an official court of inquiry. History is full of people that have been falsely accused. The other thing is setbacks. Setbacks too are a part of the life story of most successful people. Author J.K. Rowling, in her initial Harry Potter novel, was rejected 12 times. Another writer of a book for children suffered 21 rejections. The book was called The Lord of the Flies, and its author, William Golding, was eventually awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature. In his famous commencement address at Stanford University, the late Steve Jobs told the story of the three blows of fate that shaped his life. One, dropping out of university, being fired from Apple, the company he founded, and three, being diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. But rather than being defeated by them, he turned them all to creative use. Then there was the famous pop group, the Beatles. For their first audition, they performed for a record company who told them that guitar bands were on their way out. The verdict on their performance in January 1962 was, "The Beatles have no future in show business." All this explains Winston Churchill's great remark that success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. It may be that what sustains people through repeated setback is belief in themselves, or sheer tenacity, or lack of alternatives. I believe that what sustained great people like Nelson Mandela, Gandhi, Churchill, and many others through their setbacks was their insight into providence. At some stage, they must have realized that they were one of the characters in a far larger drama, and that all the bad things that had happened to them were necessary if the intended outcome was to occur. This willingness to let events work themselves out in accordance with providence, this understanding that we are at best no more than co-authors of our lives, allows you to survive without resentment about the past or despair in the face of the future. And so I found that trusting God can give you immense strength, which is what you will need if you are to dare greatly. Whatever malice other people harbor against you, and the more successful you are as a leader, the more malice there is. If you can say, "You intended to harm me, but God intended for good," you will survive, your strength intact and your energy undiminished. You will suffer setbacks as a leader. My challenge to you is to get up again and continue to dare greatly. Remember, leadership is a burden, a privilege, and an awesome responsibility. Have a super day.